Beyond Natural Cures, Real Body Mind Health by Aurore Henze, Naturopath. Introduction. Many Americans have read or at least familiar with the book Natural Cures by Kevin Trudeau. Many of us have been busy self-healing and clearing an array of herbs and vitamins off the shelves of our local health food stores. While this is a tremendous step forward for society that has, until now, refused to be weaned from pharmaceutical drugs, we have entered into a transitional period, an in-between state in our national health crisis. Many of us are earnestly trying to live more naturopathic life and are not getting the desired results. Some of us are getting positive results, symptomatically in a few areas, but are still plagued by chronic disease or sickness. Then there are those who have become sick, tried taking a popular natural remedy like echinacea or ginger, and when it didn't work, headed back to the web of medical doctors. These people, I would argue, have never fully committed themselves to the naturopathic realm, and their skepticism and fear led them to experience flawed results. On a positive note, our society is finally breaking free of some of its medical constraints, in part because of the rising healthcare costs and the lack of positive results in current medical treatments. When we start to see our hard-earned money flooding directly to doctors who have harmed our children and families, we begin to understand that we must start reclaiming our power, our right to be healthy and free. Many people have continued going to doctors knowing they were not getting what they needed simply because it was covered by insurance. I was happy to see that the book, Natural Cures, caught on so quickly. But Trudeau is not the first person to write a book of this nature. He was able to hit the market at a pivotal time and dedicated a considerable amount of money for promoting and advertising. My book, however, takes natural health alternatives a step further by addressing the issue of how to remove blocks to healing of equal importance, how to find the elusive sense of balance. When discussing blocks to healing, I am referring to both a physical constitutional condition, which is referred to as a chronic miasm, in addition to the emotional blocks that can be both conscious and unconscious. Having exhausted their natural resources, many have been hooked on an array of expensive supplements without realizing that vitamins and herbs can be just as addictive as prescription drugs. It seems to me that there are two issues that are directly responsible for this: isolated, vigilante, natural healthcare professionals, and endless self-diagnosis thanks to the internet. Why all this wheel spinning in the natural health realm? The first problem lies in the reality that many naturopath doctors tend to be locked into sedentary alternative healing methods. In some ways, they have become like medical doctors, catching on to certain trends or mindsets and treating each person in the same manner. They can do this easily with special machines, outdated protocols, and one-size-fits-all diets. For this subset of practitioners, healing thus becomes a no-brainer. This can also be said about chiropractors who continually overextend the boundaries of their expertise. It is not unusual to leave their office after they put on a quick applied kinesiology show and spend at least $200 or more on their special herbs and vitamins, affectionately called nutraceuticals in some cases. Like a medical doctor, they rely heavily on radiation, x-rays, and many take a condescending approach to their clients and talk down to them. Rarely do they take the time to sit down and educate you with any treatment. The relationship is simple to them. They have the information and you are required to benefit from it without understanding it. Keep in mind, by the way, that the word doctor comes from the Latin word docere, which means to teach. In this respect, they make up a segment of borderline natural healthers who have left the cadre of traditional medical doctors and are also too intimidated to step fully into the holistic realm. I pose this question about chiropractic care. Does anyone ever truly get healed from chiropractic treatments? Once you go to a chiropractor, you will have to keep going and returning for the rest of your life. This is not because chiropractic care doesn't work. In fact, it does work by moving your vertebrae and aligning your body. However, many times the relief you experience from a chiropractic treatment is short-lived because the fascia and muscle memory in it will clamp down around the bones and put everything back to where it was before. Truly, the best chiropractors are the ones that specialize in their field, do not rely heavily on x-rays, and incorporate important muscle release therapy such as Rolfing, craniosacral therapy, myofascial release. A good chiropractor, like any healthcare professional, will know his or her limits and will be involved in a community of skilled alternative therapists rather than isolated from them. I myself have had my own experiences with chiropractors following chronic paralyzing stiff necks for years. After origami treatments, the alternative form of psychotherapy, body mind psychotherapy that is, energy was stuck in my neck literally, and my local chiropractor worked on me for 2 years trying to correct it. At one point, he even started threatening me. He said that I had a permanent reverse curve and that if I didn't get x-rays that he wouldn't treat me anymore. I finally gave up and went to Rolfing to cure it. And yes, it did completely cure it, by the way. Ironically, when I told my chiropractor I was going to get Rolfed, he had discouraged me from doing so and warned me that it was way too painful for me to endure. Later, when he asked me why I didn't go back to his office any longer, I told him my neck pain was cured from Rolfing. He admitted he had been Rolfed too. As you can imagine, I was shocked to find out he had gone through all 10 Rolfing sessions himself. It turns out this practice changed his life and healed his chronic pain, but he doesn't recommend it to everybody because people can't handle the pain. The only reason why the chiropractor allowed me to suffer for so long and withhold this knowledge about his personal success with Rolfing is as plain as simple as greed and egotism. Or as we like to say nowadays, narcissism. It still bothers me that he chose to let me suffer on top of draining my insurance company. Now that insurance companies are limiting or stopping their chiropractic coverage, many chiropractors will be out of business. This may be an initial painful process, but in the end, only quality practitioners will survive this. Chiropractic care isn't the only health-related arena that can be found guilty of being closed-minded. This is a danger in all health professions, and both chiropractors and naturopaths alike have been guilty of not communicating enough to create a holistic community of shared knowledge. The chiropractic profession has fought long and hard to get where it is today, and has had to make many concessions to be taken seriously. In fact, in 1987, the American Medical Association was convicted of conspiring overtly and covertly to destroy the chiropractic profession for over 12 years. Also convicted were the American College of Surgeons and the American College of Radiologists. A Sable 2000 footnote. The chiropractic field is fortunate to have attained a respected status within the allopathic realm. It has, however, taken its toll within the profession and has perhaps caused chiropractors to feel isolated out of fear of being disenfranchised yet again. The truth is simple. We all need to come together to share our wealth of knowledge and stop judging each other from the perspective of biased assessments and fear, often based in money. The second reason I blame for the lack of results and methods of natural healing is the ineffectiveness of self-diagnosing. Our deepest chronic blocks are what we ourselves cannot or refuse to see. Here I offer an example from my own experience. Before I became a doctor of natural health, I tried unsuccessfully for 3 years to overcome a chronic candida infection that I had been carrying for over 25 years. When I finally did get rid of it, it came right back. I had the same experience with weight gain. This recurrence happened for 2 reasons. The first is that I started self-healing because of the poor results I had attained from various local naturopaths. More importantly, I did not want to see or deal with the core emotional issues that were inevitably attached to my chronic disorder. I had a dairy addiction that stood in the way from my finding wellness, and whenever I attempted to go off dairy, I would become angry, and then that anger would be followed by excuses. The excuses in my mind were always reasons why I could or should be allowed to have it. These types of emotions kept me running in place for years. I started working with an ergonomist doctor or body mind psychologist to help me explore and release my emotional blocks to wellness. It was within this context and treatment path of ergonomy that I realized that milk represented my mother and could connect the potent ways that milk nurtured me physically and emotionally. Here's a more detailed explanation of how food cravings and food-related illnesses are directly related to childhood. Having never been breastfed, I was given the bottle as an infant to appease my hunger for both food and maternal contact. This is because my mother had severe breast anxiety due to shaming by her own parents. Because of her inability to make contact with me emotionally, she resorted to overfeeding me instead of holding me when I cried. Later, I talk about how I was smothered at times with a pink water bottle that was also placed in my crib to comfort me. Chronic infant avoidance was also evidenced by me having my sister feed me propped up in a baby chair or even in my crib. Later, my father used food to punish me. I would not get any dinner if I misbehaved, and I would be sent to my room. My relationship with food was even further complicated throughout my life as an adult, as it was not unusual for my father to eat off my plate even before I was finished. In high school, I remember being embarrassed when a friend came over to my house to eat. I sat helplessly as my father snatched up most of the food out of fear that we would take it from him. Thus, it became clear that he had been punished with food as well. I spent many years bouncing back and forth between starving myself with anorexia and binge eating accompanied by vomiting, which is bulimia. Overcoming these disorders, including obesity, only occurred when I became conscious of the reasons of why and how the core of the illness was. How many people with food disorders would be helped by just becoming conscious of the fine line between food that heals and food that harms? Truly, one can eat healthy food, but one must also be able to accept the nourishment of that food and feel worthy enough to be nourished as well. It is a process of consciousness, which is only created by our willingness to become honest and truthful about our life and our feelings. We can self-diagnose and earnestly study health and the human body, but as individuals, many of us lack the ability to be honest with ourselves. We are constantly trying to lie to ourselves and others, often with the best or at least the most distracted intentions. Until we as a society can overcome that primary dilemma, we will not be able to effectively self-cure. The mirror of ourselves is forever clouded by our childhood experiences, and the truth of ourselves lies somewhere beyond the painfully distorted images of ourselves. So let's begin this journey of self-examination and consciousness. In this book, Beyond Natural Cures, we will look at the importance of knowing who we are. All healing and health depends on this premise and needs to be considered within that light. Next, we will look at therapies that extract those qualities from our very soul and release them for healing and for the true ascension of the human race. This book is actually the third in the series of the book series I've written in effort to help transform the current health crisis. In all my books, the moral is the same though. The most important question we must ask ourselves honestly is not how we will be healed, but rather, do we really want to be healed? The end of the introduction. You can find Beyond Natural Cures book series on Amazon.